Every money video gives you the same rule. Keep 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash for emergencies. And then, in the same breath, it tells you to park that cash in a savings account, earning almost nothing after tax. Here's what nobody tells Australians. If you've got a mortgage with an offset, your emergency fund doesn't have to sit there going stale. It can live in the offset, earning your loan rate around 6%, completely tax-free, and still be back in your hands by Tuesday if the hot water system explodes. Same safety, same instant access. But instead of dead money, that buffer is quietly worth over $1,000 a year. So the honest question was never how much cash should I hold? It's two sharper ones. Where should it live, and how much is actually enough? Today, the emergency fund. Run through the real Australian maths. Quick one first. General information only, not financial advice. I'm not licensed, and this doesn't know your job, your family, or your bills. The right buffer is genuinely personal, so treat this as the thinking, not a prescription. Meet Sarah. Regulars know her. If you're new, one breath. She's 35, earns 150 grand, and owns an apartment in Sydney with a mortgage and, crucially, an offset. A savings account bolted onto her loan, where every dollar sitting in it is a dollar she's not charged interest on. Now, one number this whole video hangs on, and it's not her income, it's her expenses. Sarah takes home about $9,000 a month, but if her income stopped tomorrow, she wouldn't keep spending $9 grand. She'd cancel the holiday and the nice dinners in a heartbeat. What she couldn't stop paying is the mortgage, the power, the food, the insurance. That's about $6,700 a month. Hold that number. An emergency fund covers your survival, not your lifestyle. Here's the bit the global advice gets wrong for us. Overseas, an emergency fund is a genuine trade-off. You hold cash for safety, and you accept it, earns you next to nothing. That cash drag is real, over there. In Australia, with an offset, that trade-off almost disappears. Watch. Say Sarah keeps a $20,000 buffer. In a plain transaction account, it earns her basically nothing. In a high-interest savings account at 4.5%, but taxed at her rate, it nets her about $550 a year. In her offset, it saves her the loan rate, 6.1%, and because it's saved interest rather than earned interest, it's completely tax-free, worth about $1,220 a year. Same 20 grand, same instant access. Roughly double the after-tax benefit of the savings account, and infinitely more than the transaction account. And this isn't clever. MoneySmart, the government's own site, says it plainly. If you have a home loan with an offset, you can use it as your emergency fund. It lowers your interest, and you can get to it quickly. So where it lives is the easy question. If you've got an offset, that's the answer. The hard question is the next one. An emergency fund answers exactly one question. If my income stopped, how long could I keep paying the bills I can't avoid? And how long might it take to get income back? So the maths isn't really a number, it's a multiplication. Your essential monthly outgoings, times the number of months you want to cover. MoneySmart's starting point is 3 months. Why 3? Because for a stable, in-demand worker, that's roughly a reasonable job hunt with a bit of breathing room. For Sarah, 3 months of her $6,700 in essentials is about $20,000. That's her baseline, but 3 months isn't a law, it's a starting dial. So let's turn it. The number of months moves with how exposed you are, and there are really only a few levers. 1 income or 2. If you're the only earner, like Sarah, your income stopping means all of it stops, so you carry the full buffer. A couple with two incomes only has to cover the gap if one job goes, and the odds of both going at once are low. So a couple can usually run leaner, maybe a couple of months. The catch: if a couple both work at the same company or the same shaky industry, that's really one income wearing two hats. Treat it like a single. Anyone depending on you. Kids push it up two ways. Their costs are non-negotiable, so your essentials are higher, and you can't trim a child's needs the way you'd trim your own. Single income plus kids is the classic 6-month case. For a household spending $7,500 a month, that's around $45,000. How steady is the income itself? A permanent salary in a field that's hiring rarely stops and gets replaced fast. Fewer months. Commission, contract, gig work, or an industry doing layoffs. Income can drop, more often and with less warning, so more months. 6 is sensible there too. None of these is me telling you a number. They're the factors. The more single income, the more dependence, the more wobbly the work, the bigger the buffer that makes sense. And notice what doesn't change. The months. Sarah's number is a Sydney number. Her big city mortgage makes her essentials about $6-7 a month. Swap her to a Brisbane or Adelaide apartment, and the essentials might be $5,500. So the same 3 months is about $16,500 instead of $20. A couple in a Sydney house with bigger bills, the same 3 months might be $25. The framework is identical everywhere. It's months of your essentials. So take your own must-pay number, pick your months off that dial, and that's your target. Not mine, not a Sydney influencer's, yours. 4 honest catches, because the offset trick has edges. 1. It only works if you've got a mortgage. No mortgage, you're renting, or you've paid the house off, and there's nothing to offset against. Your buffer still needs to exist. It just lives in a high-interest savings account. Instead, earning less and taxed. The months are the same. The home for it changes. 2. Redraw is not the same as an offset. Some people keep their buffer as extra repayments they could redraw later. It saves the same interest, but the bank can freeze, reduce, or reprice redraw, and it can be slower to get. An offset is your cash in your account. For an emergency fund, that difference matters. Reachable is the whole point. 3. The discipline trap. An offset buffer only works if you actually leave it there. If 20 grand sitting next to your everyday spending is 20 grand, you'll quietly nibble on a holiday, then it's not a buffer. It's a spending account with delusions. Ring fence it. A separate offset sub-account, mentally labeled do not touch. 4. Don't overhold. This is the one people miss. Cash is king up to your buffer. Past it, every extra dollar in the offset only ever earns your loan rate. Say Sarah kept 50 grand in there when her buffer is 20. That extra 30,000 earns her about 1,800 a year, guaranteed tax-free, which is great. But the same 30 grand invested might average closer to 2,500 at the price of real risk. Which is better? That's not an emergency fund question anymore. It's the offset versus invest question from another video entirely. The point: your buffer is for safety. Money beyond it is for deciding. So, the next dollar call. Where does your next dollar of safety work hardest? If you have a mortgage with an offset, the answer for your buffer is almost boringly clear. Put it in the offset. Same safety as a savings account. Roughly double the after-tax benefit and reachable in a day. How much? Take your essential outgoings, not your lifestyle, and multiply by the months your situation calls for. 3 if you're single and secure. Closer to 6 if you're the only income. have people depending on you, or your work is unpredictable. And then stop. The buffer's job is to let you sleep, not to grow. Once it's full, your next dollar isn't a safety dollar anymore. It's a choice. Pay the loan down faster, or invest. And that's a different, and honestly more exciting, question. The real trap was never holding too little. For a lot of careful people, it's holding too much. A big pile of safe money, quietly earning the least it possibly could, out of a fear that a well-sized buffer already handles. If you want Aussie money decisions with the actual maths instead of vibes, subscribe. There's a whole series working through them, one honest number at a time. I'll see you in the next one.